Today on Rise Up, we go into some global headlines on the news segment. Next, we look into community posts made on the official YouTube channel of the riser, Abdullah Hashim Abba al-Sadiq. Stories of the prophets. Who was Joshua the son of Nun? And finally, a closer look. Sister Saiha gives us a closer look at religion and truth. This is Rise Up.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Rise Up. My name is Alia Halal.
Very good morning. Welcome to Rise Up. I'm Irfan Alamgir.
Today, we're going to be covering quite a bit of global news as well as a lot of community updates that we have regarding our believing family around the world. We are the Ahmadi religion of peace and light. In front of you are sitting two missionaries of the riser, Abdullah Hashim Abba al-Sadiq. We are a people that believe that the name Abdullah mentioned in the will of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, is the name of the riser, Abdullah Hashim Abba al-Sadiq, who is the only claimant of the will by the name Abdullah in the last 1400 years, which is quite something. And it is a testament to the truth of this call and the truth of this religion. And the reason we bring up the news is because it's very much to do with the times we're living in, and it's quite necessary that we remember the significance of that.
Yes, and we have some very interesting news pieces coming up for you today. I think it is very, very important that people who are pursuing spiritual enlightenment also be aware of the condition of their society, because there are markers in there that will help them to identify the time that they live in, and therefore it will spur their spiritual progression. Those people who have this idealistic, fanciful thinking that they can escape in solitude somewhere for months to years and lead these lives of hermits and expect spiritual progression. It can happen. It can happen, but very, very slowly and in a very limited way. To really progress, you need to be in a society dealing with people, and the fastest way to maximize your spiritual potential is, of course, to serve other people. And in order to serve other people, you have to be aware of their needs, you have to be aware of their ills. And I think with that, we'll come to our first news heading, and it's a very interesting one. And I will read from this very fascinating article that was published. And basically, it's posing questions, rhetorical questions, really. Once you read the headline, it says, ultra-processed food, forever chemicals, declining birth rates. What's behind rising cancer in the under 50s? So there has been research into the disease, and it has never been more far-reaching, but there is little consensus as to what is causing the rocketing rates of diagnosis in young adults. So to put things into perspective, there's a graph there that shows you the different age groups, and you can see from the top one, 70 years plus. The next category is the 50-year-olds to 69, and then 15 to 49, and in all three subsets, you can see cancer rates are rising. One would think that the red one, the 70 years and over age, would be the one that it was high in and taking off. And it would make sense. As we get older, we become less able to, in general, maintain our health. And that would be understandable. But look at the way that it's increasing. Look at that slope.
Yeah.
Suddenly, after 2010, getting steeper, and that gradient getting steeper is the incidence, which means new cases being diagnosed going up. And you can see the pattern continues from the 50 to 69-year-olds, and indeed, even in the blue range, 15 to 49. So in 2022, around 16% of the 20 million people with cancer worldwide were under 50 years of age. Now, what's interesting is that between 1990 and 2019, the incidence of cancer in under 50s rose by a whopping 79%. Wow. 79%, almost 80%. And this is why they are concerned, because they're thinking, okay, we have genetic factors, we have all of these other issues, people smoking, but actually smoking is going down. Why are the cancer rates in young people with the most robust immune systems, with people who should be living their peak life during this range, why are they getting this issue? And that is where the answer to the first question, ultra-processed food, yes.
Wow.
It's a problem that's causing it. Forever chemicals, those are things that are found in our water supply.
Right.
By forever chemicals, they mean chemicals that do not break down in the body. They remain forever in your system. And in doing so, they cause all kinds of damage to the body, damage to the DNA, and they cause the mitotic process by which cells divide to go haywire, and cells divide out of control. Now, these are not normal cells dividing out of control. The control that keeps the cells healthy, the rate of them dividing increases, and it introduces these mutations and other problems so that the cells become dysfunctional cells. So when you have lymphoma, which is a blood cancer, the lymphocytes, the white cells in the body that help to protect us against viruses, are dividing out of control, and they're dividing the abnormal cells that do not really serve any particular function. And this is the problem. And when these cells divide, these cells have this insatiable appetite to consume the resources of the body that could be used by healthy cells. And as such, there is a depletion in nutrients. There's production of certain chemicals that these abnormal cells also spew out that then weaken the body's defense systems, and the cancer spreads quickly, consuming, killing, and taking resources from the healthy cells until the body eventually shuts down and causes death from infection, from other problems, from the blood poisoning. There are the release of toxins. Very, very fascinating. Cancer doesn't directly kill you. It kills you indirectly and through consuming of the resources of the body. And I think this is something really important. And I really wanted to talk about these ultra-processed foods that have been now had these huge studies published about them, and they have been classified now as a class 1 carcinogen.
Wow.
Okay, so this is now these processed meats. When I talk about processed meats, we understand by this.
What does that really mean?
Exactly. So these are meats that are like pepperoni, like these smoked and skewered meats that have had these preservatives or these preservation processes done to them that then allow you to put them into foil wrappers. Beef jerky is a very big one as well. And the consuming of these is now on par with smoking cigarettes.
Oh my goodness, who would have thought?
This is it. And this is why I am always launching a campaign against these particular foodstuffs, because just as you do not want our children, we don't want our teenagers smoking, we don't want our elderly people smoking, why do we put in our food, mixed in with the egg, these processed skewered meats, these smoked meats that really serve no real purpose other than putting many, many carcinogens into the system? Add to the mix the forever chemicals, add to the mix the increasing environmental pollution, and you have a real epidemic on your hands. And this is the explanation. To a large part, I think most credible scientists will say that the evidence is all pointing in the direction of these environmental toxins that has caused a 79% increase in cancer rates in those people who are young, under 50 years of age. I mean, just imagine from the early 90s to 2019, it's an interesting date as well, because then we had COVID and many things like this as well, but in that window of time, for something to go up by nearly 80%, does that not warrant people to sit down and see and investigate what's going on?
For sure it does.
It's one of those alarming pieces of news that if you are detached from society, if you're not aware of what's going on, it can actually harm you and your family. And this is why these signs, these news articles, this news that reaches us, it's so important for us to be switched on and really attentive to them. Just like the call of the Mahdi, which is even more important. Because if you are unaware that there is a man who has the Spirit of God, who has been sent not just for your spiritual welfare, but for your physical and mental welfare, and you are completely unaware that there is a call going on and there is a criteria by which to recognize God's vicegerent, you will also pay the penalty for it. And no one can plead ignorance if people are dying, in this case from cancer. There are also many, many more people dying spiritual deaths. And they will leave their faith for many different reasons. Perhaps they were abused as a child by a member of the clergy that they had respected, that were friends with their parents, and then they think, what kind of God would allow this to happen to me, would allow this to happen to us? And this line of questioning leads them down a dark path, and they then become atheists, or they leave the faith altogether and they fight religion wherever it would rise up. And this is obviously the wrong conclusion to reach. One has to investigate and know what's going on and make the changes. So now that I've told you this interesting piece of news, and I've mentioned these certain things that are in our environment that are causing young people to die at an increasing rate from all forms of cancer. This includes breast cancer, colon cancer, and even diagnosis among men, younger men, of prostate cancer is increasing. Then you have to act upon it, because we care about our physical health and most people are afraid to die. But what about dying spiritually, mentally, and physically by not recognizing the messenger from God who was sent to liberate you, who was sent to build the divine just state for you, where there is no cancer, where there is no pollution, where you can drink water and know that it is health-giving water, knowing that it will hydrate you, it will sustain you, it will nourish you, and not slowly poison you and your family and cause these alarming problems to take place in your life.
And that is very possible. It's something that we can create, and we can manifest that together. We can work towards that. We can dedicate our lives and our efforts towards that goal and that mission, but it requires being aware. And I think it's very aptly put when you say that there is a spiritual death that's also very, very terrifying and something to be worried about. People worry about losing their physical lives, but what about your spiritual life? And when you see these clergy, I mean, when you see these supposed representatives of God, and that's what's the creepy part, is that they claim to represent religion, they claim to represent God. So it becomes our source of understanding of God becomes these men who God never appointed in the first place. And that's why I think, ironically speaking, the cancer in our society is these individuals who are depleting our society of any health or any nutrition or any benefit, because people are drained when they see that this is the face of God in reality. But it's not. And that's what we have to wake up to.
Yes. So colorectal cancer are the non-working scholars. They reside in the colon, they divide out of control, and they kill the people in a very harmful way.
Very ruthlessly.
Very ruthlessly. And the non-working scholars, they're like a brain tumor. You know, they will plunder, they will take, they will loot, and then a new one will come along and repeat and be worse than the one that was there before. And these cancers, just as we need to treat them more effectively and efficiently, we also need to realize that in order to treat the physical cancer, we must first treat the cause of the physical cancer. And yes, I talked about ultra-processed foods, especially ultra-processed meats, but really the source of it is what? It's greed. It's about putting on the shelf, and first of all, not informing the people. This should be on every single news channel. Why is this not dominating the airways? And what is dominating the airways are some old people sitting around in the Senate or in the wherever they are, and they're debating issues back and forth with each other that really have no bearing in terms of the what benefits the people. It's usually vested interests, ulterior motives, money talks. That's another theme that we see in the world, the way that it is wired in this day and age. And people are really not concerned about the common man, the average man who works hard, who supports his family, who has children, and he just wants to make ends meet, and they are barely staying afloat. And by the way, these cancer statistics, they're coming from the richer countries, they're coming from the European countries and the Americas. And we've proven over and over again that overconsumption of meat in the China study, we've spoken about it before, is has an incredibly strong causal relationship with colorectal cancer. And in our country, in the UK, the problem became so bad that anybody who is over a certain age, the British government, the National Health Service in this country, sends through their mailbox a test which looks for occult blood in the feces, and this is actually supposed to pick up or indicate towards further investigations if they find small amounts of microscopic blood. It's a real headache, and it's big in this country. Actually, the UK has one of the highest rates of increasing colorectal cancer in those under the age of 50. And it is very alarming, and the screening tests are all great, to send people in, and if there's small amounts of blood that they're not aware of, then they come in and have further tests. They have the full colonoscopy where they put a little lighted telescope in and they look around the entire gut to make sure there's no hidden tumors or cancers that could be developing. And if treated at an early age, or at an early stage rather, before it's spread too far, the chances of survival are very good. But it still involves a big operation sometimes. People have to have parts of their intestines chopped out, and then having these stomas, these things that are brought to the surface through the wall of the abdomen, and they have the temporary attachment of a bag that catches their feces. So even though you survive, what type of quality of life do you survive with? So I think whilst the screening programs are good, and they are something that has definitely saved lives without a shadow of a doubt, but the root cause of the problem is not these issues, and the fix is not these surgeries. It is waking up and rising up to support the Caliph of God in your time, the man appointed by God. It really is your life depend on it, because the Caliph of God would look at these statistics, he would take stock of the situation, and he would make changes very quickly. There wouldn't be old men debating it for months and months and questioning the credibility of this study and that study, whilst the pharmaceutical companies accumulate billions and billions of dollars, until the politicians finally say, well, now we've lost enough slaves, we really need to replenish our slave force, let's do something about it, because now the pockets of the shareholders are getting light and we need some results. And then perhaps they will do something to address the problem with the consumption of these ultra-processed meats and foods and the chemicals that they are putting in our water, allegedly, to keep us healthy.
That's just like, why are we allowing that we live in a world where that has to be the case, that we have to reach that level of such a broken down kind of society where, as you said, it won't even be a cause for alarm until enough people have suffered, enough people have lost their lives and lost loved ones. Then at some point someone will think to themselves, let's change something about it, when we can easily prevent it right now at the offset.
Exactly. And look, here's, I think this could be the theme of the day, right? When you think of the Ahlul Bayt, the family of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family,
Peace be upon him.
they are really the teachers of monotheism. And Abu Sadiq, the riser of the family of Muhammad, whose name is Abdullah, mentioned in the will of the Holy Prophet, alongside names such as Imam Ali bin Abi Talib, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir. In that same will is mentioned the name Abdullah. And he said that, he told us, peace is from him, that the highest knowledge is the knowledge of Tawheed, the knowledge of monotheism. And this oneness that exists, the oneness, the unity of God, but also the unity of the way that we are supposed to live, right? So we are not just mental, physical kind of machines where we have a body and a mind and they get sick because they're two separate things. Actually, the fragmentation and the compartmentalization of society is something that has caused a lot of problems in our world. It's the same as when you draw a border between a land that has been one country for many years. It's compartmentalizing things, it's breaking down into fragments, it's fracturing of that unity that is mankind. When you draw a border, for example, on a map, And likewise in health, we are not just physical, mental, emotional beings, we are human beings, and physical health and mental health, for example, are related. And this is something that I will cover in one of the next news pieces. But the knowledge of monotheism is important. We have to realize that everything is connected. There is an interplay and an interaction that occurs in the lives that we lead, and we need to ask questions and get answers from them if we are going to progress on our spiritual, mental, and physical well-being journeys. They are all interlinked, and God and His vicegerent are the people who see the things as they are. They see things as a whole, and as such, because they don't have this compartmentalization going on, they're able to solve problems much more effectively than the non-working scholars in the religion and the tyrannical rulers who rule for themselves and not for service to mankind. And this paradigm shift needs to take place. It needs to take place fast, because even if you can inform yourself of this news and make those certain changes, the true change will only come when God's caliph is sitting on the throne of leadership. Until that happens, you can filter the water as much as you like. You can stay away from processed foods. But eventually there is something else that will come, and 10 years down the line we'll find out that something very innocuous that we never thought was causing problems is killing us, and is actually the real cause for the massive increase in cancer rates. So the true solution will only come when we look at the world as a whole, everything being connected, mind, body, spirit, and act on that basis. And that can only be done by someone who is capable of seeing in this three-dimensional view that only the Caliph of God can see.
Yes, and again, as you said earlier, these headlines are so important because they highlight very clearly the fact that the world is in need of help, and also they give us the opportunity to emphasize the fact that the role of God's sent savior, the role of the man that God Himself appoints, is much greater than simply to guide us towards living a spiritual life. And the Mahdi is much greater in his role than the people give him credit for. And to belittle his mission statement to simply being the Mahdi will tell us how to pray and how to fast, etc., is really undermining the point that he was sent for in the first place. It's very unfortunate, but we've said it before as well on this show, the scholars of religion, but in particular the scholars of Islam, have made this kind of portrayal of who the Mahdi will be by saying that he's simply someone who comes to guide the people towards being more spiritual. He validates the previous religion of Islam that already was existing, and then he leaves. And that is absolutely not the point of the Mahdi. The Mahdi comes to save the world, and part of that includes bringing awareness of these facts and giving solutions to them, because solutions are very much needed, and you cannot find the solutions to these problems from people who have not been appointed by God, because they will always have some sort of selfish interest for themselves that's included in the equation, whereas the man sent by God is absolutely selfless and simply working for the benefit of humanity. That's the difference between us and him. We cannot compare the fallible people to an infallible caliph that God Himself has appointed. There's absolutely no comparison.
Yes, and these cold, callous individuals who are leading the people who are in positions of leadership, they actually don't believe in our interconnectedness. If I was to see you and Alia and I saw that you were suffering and I did not feel the suffering that you felt, I'm not going to respond to you, right?
Exactly.
If I see you as a separate entity, and this is why monotheism is so important, even in the lives that we live in the material world, that all the sages from all the great traditions, whether it's Jesus Christ in Judea, who says, love your neighbor like yourself, he's saying that actually, and Abba Sadiq said it, he said, you are actually oneself.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it kind of connects with Abba Sadiq's latest talk, where
that was incredible, right?
Right? It really was. And it was a beautiful message of unity. You know, and Abba Sadiq in the end, he signs off in his amazing style when he thanks Sister Tiffany as Abba Sadiq.
He referred to her as Abba Sadiq because that's the point he's trying to drive, is we are all actually one. It's not just a poetic, nice thing to say. It is the reality at hand. So we have to come to terms with it. Yeah,
and it's a true unity, and we will feel it. You know, subhanAllah, one of the best things that you can do spiritually for yourself, if you haven't already done so, is to have a child. Because when you have a child and that child is suffering, you will move mountains to make sure that their suffering ends, because there's a connection with that child. And I think nowhere more is that connection greater between a mother and a baby. And that is precisely why God says, I love you 70 times more than your mother loves you. You know,
because you can understand that kind of relationship or that connection. And if with the mother it's so strong, imagine 70 times that.
70 times or not, because there is a physical, literal connection between the mother and the fetus as it's growing over 9 months in the womb of the mother. And that umbilical cord is an actual, literal connection with them. And when something happens to that child, the mother feels the pain as it were her own pain.
Yes.
And then, you know, the mother, father, they will do anything to make sure that the suffering of that child ends. If the child is crying, their hearts start to feel that pain, right?
You can physically feel the pain even.
You can physically feel the pain, and we've all been there when our child's been sick or when they need attention or something has gone wrong, and then, you know, we are very, very quick to respond and react, and we have to reach that same level of connection between one another, because we are not just physically connected, we are connected as the rays of the sun going back to the sun. We are from the same essence and we're from the same oneness. And this is really that state that we have to reach, so that when you see your brother who has no genetic connection with you, but he has a soul connection with you, and he's suffering or he's going through some strife or difficulty, you need to be able to feel that pain. And this is why compassion, why rahmah is mentioned in all of the spiritual traditions as the door to God. Because when you have compassion, when you've really, really built this attribute of God within you, it is that veil, that door that allows you to understand what monotheism is, because you feel the other's pain like yourself. And this is what the Imam of the time is. This is why they are always concerned for the welfare of others, because they don't distinguish. If my brother is suffering, I'm suffering. And if I'm suffering, you always do something about it, right? To end your suffering. So that is the mentality that we need to have for not just our children, but our brothers and sisters and all those in suffering, all human beings suffering around the world, whether somebody's being diagnosed with cancer or not. You have to imagine that it's you being diagnosed with cancer. How would you feel? What would you be going through? Imagine the pain that they feel when they're undergoing chemotherapy or being shocked by these X-rays and radiation waves as their hair falls out. And you know, we've all had family members who've died of cancer. I'm sure people can relate to what I'm saying. And then when we feel the pain of our beloved one, our physical family member, our heart goes out to them, and we will do anything we can to ease their suffering. Likewise, it must be with all of humanity. And until that happens, and that can never happen until the Spirit of God is ruling on earth as God rules in heaven.
Yes.
So that's the first news piece. Alia was wondering how long it would go on for, but I think it has a really good connection, right, with everything. I think this is how we need to, on Rise Up Now, approach all of the news pieces we do, so that people can find that kind of connection.
There is something very significant about everything God shows us.
Yeah.
And the news headlines are also signs from Him. And if you can see that and realize the lesson in it that we should be applying, it's not just a nice idea, but it's a practical application of faith itself, then of course...
And it all goes down to the same solution, Ali, right? So the cure for cancer is...
always the same solution.
The proof of God.
Yes.
Right? The cure for these killer viruses, the proof of God. The cure for mental illness, schizophrenia, call it by whatever label you wish to call it, proof of God.
Yes.
Everything solution is the Spirit of God in that time, which is why the goal of the wise is to recognize Him in your life and submit to Him and serve Him, because in serving Him, you're actually benefiting your own self.
And I do want to add, because you've said it so beautifully when you mentioned how unity is about that connection between one another, it is essentially that, as Prophet Muhammad said, peace be upon him and his family, we are one body, right? The nation is one body. But imagine a body without a head. It wouldn't work. So you do need a head. And for people to say, well, if you use your own aql and you just do what you think is right, it'll be enough. No, it won't, because you do need that head. You need that sun from where the sources of light are emitting. So who is the sun? Who is the head? It has to be one person, one spirit. And disregarding that is essentially saying a body can walk around without a head, which, as we know, is not possible. Is it, Dr. Irfan? As a doctor, maybe you can vouch for that.
It's very interesting to see somebody survive without a head. And like you said, Alia, that's the one part that you cannot really survive with. You
need that.
You can get limbs amputated, you can lose your fingers and toes, but the head is not going to be a good thing for anyone, right? So this is the way it is. And when somebody does, like you, that's a very good analogy, because when we do develop, for example, gangrene in the physical body, we don't just chop off the limb. We try to get blood supply going back into that part of the body that is being cut off from the rest, and we try to save it. We try to save it by any means necessary. And then only last resort, if there's no other option, only then do you consider doing surgery and amputations and all of these things. So let's really get into the theme of monotheism and apply it in our daily lives, even in this world that tells us that we are separate. This is why the world is an illusion, because it's saying that we are actually separate from one another, when actually we are very, very closely connected, and we are, like we always say, one human family.
Yes.
Okay, good. So now let's come to the next news headline. If we could put it up on the screen, please. Right, so now more corruption. Now imagine there is corruption in the judicial system. People are like, yeah, I've seen corruption in the judicial system. I've seen corrupt cops pull people over and then you give them some money and they leave you alone. I've seen all kinds of corruption in politics. I've seen corruption in the educational system, but no one really likes to confront the reality that some of the worst corruptions are happening in the medical field. Now, we've all had that moment of vulnerability where our health has been questioned. We think we might have something serious, we're going to die of cancer or something else. People worry because there is a lot to worry about. But you never expect that in this area there would be as much corruption as there is. And I think there's a very strong argument that this is one of the most corrupt fields that exists, because it preys on the vulnerabilities of the people. It preys on the people's need to be healthy and well, and we should all have that wish and will. So let's go to this headline. It says, Wegovy maker Novo Nordisk rebuked by Watchdog over failure to disclose payments to UK health groups. Danish drug giant found to have failed to accurately report sending even after admitting to errors. Okay, so this is another multifaceted kind of news piece, because drugs and medications that are produced by Big Pharma, they're designed to create solutions to these illnesses, to heal us from our illnesses. But there is such a big financial aspect to this whole thing. There is such a big problem with trying to get people healthy, that in order to get them healthy, they have to say, there's these 3-4 different medications, but now because we were the first one to come up with it, we have applied for this license. No one else can make this medication, and you must pay us this much until the time when our license runs out, and then other people can make the same medication, right? So this is a phenomenon that exists in the medical world. It's very, very well known that these medications that are produced by this one drug giant, they will say, okay, now we're going to call this Wegovy. And we are the only people who are allowed to make this medication. This is a medication that helps with weight loss and diabetes and other issues like this. It's an injection that you put into your stomach. And there are many other different classes of drugs that have the same background. No one can make this drug except the one that we have made until our license expires. Then everybody can make it. And in that time that only we're allowed to make it, this is what we're going to price it at. And it is obscene what happens in these areas. And then when the license runs out, then other people can make it. People in different countries can make it, and the price suddenly drops to 1/10th, 1/20th, 1/50th of the price that was initially charged. And they're like, well, we're the ones who developed this medication. We're the ones who put investment into our research and development sections. And this is why we are the ones who are going to now profit from this, and no one else is allowed to make this drug. And if they do make this drug, we'll sue them, and the company goes down. Is this really the mentality of human beings? This way of competing with each other, and if somebody has a medication, then they should always try to price it at a level where people can access the medication. I mean, why do we make medications? To become rich and powerful, or do we actually make them to help people?
Well, clearly because they need it, they're going to use it to profit, right? I mean, isn't that how it's working these days? Yes,
and this is the thing. It works this way, and then the people who prescribe these medications, here's the other issue that exists in mainstream medical practice in the West especially, is that if there is a medication for a problem, let's say you have high blood pressure, right? Now, there will be drug companies that come to your clinic, come to your practice. They'll come with these luncheons and different types of things, calculators, pens, briefcases, all kinds of little perks and gifts. If you prescribe our brand, we will give you XYZ. We might even throw a laptop in there if you're the chief of the clinic, and then just prescribe our version of it rather than their version of it. And it's this kind of gangster capitalism that we saw come to the fore also when COVID hit in such a big way. And this competition in certain ways is okay, but this competition that makes people lose their lives in the name of money, it's horrific, it's horrendous, it's inhumane. And we have to call it like it is. The problem has been around for many, many years. And then when some scientific genius, some medical genius comes up in history and he has an alternative way of doing things, he is shunned, he is rebuked, he's called all kinds of names. And then their technology that they develop to treat a problem like cancer suddenly goes underground. And they are completely discredited. They lose their licenses. They lose everything. And this is another problem, that innovation only comes from those systems that have been set up by those in power. And the individuals, and there are many, I'm sure, that you can think of, they, just as they exist in engineering, they also exist in medicine. And they also exist in technological energy areas where instead of fossil fuel consumption, you can get cars to move with water. And there have been models and proposals, and suddenly that person who did it disappears, or they die in a car accident, or a plane crash, or something terrible happens to them, and then we are back.
What a dark world. This is so insane. Just hearing you lay it out like that, it's so baffling. I mean, we know it happens, but it's so sinister.
Yes.
It's so bad.
If you can't put a meter on it and charge for it, they're not interested in it, And this is not the methodology of God. This is not the method by which God's prophets and messengers came with. They were here to ease the lives of human beings and not make them complicated, and not to enslave the majority to a small minority who enrich themselves on the backs of the poor, who ride them like donkeys and break their backs, and when they die, they do the same to their children. This is a form of slavery, and we are living in a form of slavery. And life can be so much better on this planet if only we woke up to see that as a possibility. If only we would read the Mahdi's manifesto and look at the solution that Abba Sadiq has given in plain English in 30 pages. If we were just to apply that, all of our problems would dissolve. Lives would become stress-free. We can then spiritually wake up. We can then astrally project. We can then have interstellar travel. We can then explore our universe. We can then live for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So this is the vision that Abba Sadiq has conveyed, and you can see what the dark side is doing, and you have to wake up and give your allegiance to God's true Caliph, and in doing so you will find liberation.
Yes, that's what we believe, and we're seeing it, we're living it. We know that there is a world that is possible where solutions are found to problems, and that problems are not left stagnant or getting cold on the shelf somewhere where nobody cares about them, but rather we do know that actively working together can solve these issues. Under the guidance of the man sent by God, who is Abba Sadiq, from him is peace. Alhamdulillah. So,
Alhamdulillah.
We have one more news piece.
We have time for one more news piece?
Let's do the last one, absolutely, yes.
Okay, let's try and storm through this, because I know we have a very special guest coming up soon.
Oh yes, and we actually have a special guest today. It wasn't mentioned in the introduction, but we have a special guest who will be joining us today for a very special interview. So hang in tight for that, but definitely we should go through the news.
Yeah, this will be a quicker one. Let's bring up our last news piece, please, on the screen. There it is. So, now, the mind-body revolution, how the division between mental and physical illness fails us all. New research shows Western medicine's traditional split between brain and body is in fact far from clear-cut and could provide a breakthrough for many complex conditions. And again, it comes down to our theme of the day, which is to look at things as a whole, to see mind, body, and spirit as emanations of one truth. And in doing so, we can solve our medical issues much more clearly. And this is what this article exactly argues. It says that, for example, people with mental health problems, whether it's OCD, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, or anything else, a large number of these people have signs of damage to their brain, which is picked up in functional MRI scans. And as such, it's not just a mental problem, it's a physical health problem. They will see physical illnesses like metabolic syndrome, diabetes, impulse control. These issues will exist much more in people who have these mental ailments. And the article argues that we really need to look at the problem as a whole and have a holistic approach to treatment. You know, not just drugs that sedate and cause potentially alarming issues, including cancer, which some of these mental health drugs can do, and they're monitored for liver failure and kidney failure and other such things. Let's look at it from a holistic perspective. Let's focus on the exercises that these people can do. Maybe if they are doing regular exercise, maybe if they are taking care of their mind, body and spirit, so if they are not religious, at least could they become part of a group where they are working for a purposeful outcome. They have purpose to their lives. Perhaps, just maybe, they don't need to take the vast doses of medications that are injected into their bodies because it's convenient. You know, the article says maybe they don't need the medication at all. Maybe through good nutrition, exercising, and meditation, and connecting with people to create a purposeful outcome, maybe that will preclude the need for drugs that have horrendous side effects. Or, worst case scenario, you halve the dose, you reduce the dose to the minimum possible to reduce the side effects that people experience and still lead normal lives. And I think this is really a very insightful article. It's very interesting. And the way the person who talks about this, and I'm really happy that, that there are people who are putting this in mainstream newspapers and it's reaching at least some audience. It's not getting the headlines that it deserves because unfortunately people are not reading so much. They are watching the news. But this should be dominating the airways. And this is why blogs and podcasts have become so successful recently, because people have realized that mainstream media is not giving them what they need and that they serve an agenda and that the rich corporations are their guiding lights. And this is exactly why the riser of the family of Muhammad created this platform for the benefit of the people, so that the people would have a way to communicate and reach out. And this is why all of the live shows that we have on our 2 satellite channels, they have this facility for people to be able to call in and or just watch or comment, and we always respond. And we know that there is a demand for change. People do have this desire for a spiritual revolution that then creates a mental and physical revolution to happen. And again, it will only happen when we finally realize that we have to identify and support the Caliph of God, the Adam of our time, the Christ of our time, the Krishna of our time, the Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam of our time. And when we do that, that building of Sauron will collapse and crumble.
Lord of the Rings reference.
Exactly. And it's a very good book, actually. Everybody should read it. And it was the inspiration to a large extent of the Arrivals, and a great allegory for the journey.
And a very good movie as well, which I think people have probably watched it rather than read it most for the most part, I think.
For the most part.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But it is a very good book series, and you should read it as well. But yeah, going back to the news, I think that we can even testify to that here. How many times, and Dr. Irfan, you can definitely vouch for this, how many times have people in our community suffered from something, been very ill, or actually come to the community with some sort of disorder or illness. Yes. But then once they're in the community, once they have that connection with other people, they have a purpose, they have a lifestyle that's quite healthy and quite, basically they're given a task or they're working towards something where they're fulfilling themselves and other people. And in that process, they seem to start recovering. They seem to start to get healthier and happier. Isn't that something we've seen?
Yes, you see, one of the things that we've talked about earlier is that we said that the paradigm that the forces of darkness have is compartmentalization. Another one of their paradigms that they propagate through their various platforms is that diseases cannot be cured. Mm-hmm. They can only be managed. And do you know what that entails? Taking a medicine for the rest of your life. Right. This is not the paradigm of God and the representative of God, the Imam of the time. They believe in cures.
Because Jesus there are cures.
Cured people
yes.
of leprosy and of demonic possession and many other such things.
Blindness.
Exactly. The list is
death.
Goes on and on. Death. I mean, that's surely the final frontier, right?
And he did it.
And he did it.
And the Spirit of God can do it. And we've testified to the fact that the Riser Abu Sadiq himself has indeed done that. Not once, but several times now. So it is something that can happen. Cures do exist to every disease, and every disease has a cure. This is something that we firmly believe in. Firmly believe in.
And just to finish off on the point, Ali, that you said, the people who come into this community and they live in this way that we live, and as a family where people are connected to each other, they're concerned for one another and not just for themselves, they experience this healing, this feeding, this nourishment of the soul that takes place. And of course, this is the third and final chapter of the Mahdi's manifesto, that once you've found the leader and you've pledged allegiance to the covenant that he brings, then you build that community, and through building that community of believers who see the other as themselves, upon this foundation you can establish the divine just state. And this is the message of the Mahdi. This is his manifesto, and this is what we are lucky enough to be a part of, and you too could be if you would just wipe the dust from your eyes, rise up and realize that God is with you, and through trust in him you too can reach.
Yes. And I think I do want to highlight something about that particular point. When we say you could be part of this, what we're saying is that there will be a time, there will happen this phase that we will be living in a divine just state, where we will be, we will take a step back and look at what's been created and say, hey, we did it. We made a place where people are safe, where they're healthy, where they're happy, where they're connected, where they're not lonely, where they're not afraid, where there is security, where there is peace and light. That will happen, and that will happen in our lifetimes. That's something we will see in front of our eyes taking place. And we are seeing the roots of it already. And it's going to be taking place quite soon, and with the efforts of the people who are here on the ground. But at the moment, what we are doing, at the moment, what we are experiencing here in this community, because a lot of people out there are curious. They see us, they've seen our activities, they've watched various videos where we're living together, we're talking to each other, or they've seen, for example, on the 23rd of January of this very month, they've seen how we celebrated together, and people have been writing in and asking questions about how is it that we live, etc. And I do want to point out something very important, and that is that here we have with us the Qaim of the family of Muhammad. We have Abdullah Hashim Abu Sadiq, the one appointed by God. And we say that he is that Holy Spirit that guides the world and the people. But around him, the men and women that you see are people who are literally giving their lives for the sake of the same ideal that he gave his life for. So he has dedicated himself and his youth and his reputation and his family's safety and everything he owns that is dear to him. He has given it up to God, and he hasn't looked back once. And he has stepped forward in courage and in ferocity, saying he will reach his goal whether the world opposes him or not. And with him are those who have the same ideal. With him are men and women who believe in the same goal and have the same resilience and have the same dedication and are not afraid to lose everything that they love, because it wouldn't work any other way. So for anyone who wants to reach the Ark of Salvation, or anyone who wants to knock on the door of God, bear in mind the requirement that comes with it. Bear in mind the condition. You would come to our headquarters, or you would come to our community, and you would see around you a group of men and women who surround the Qaim of the family of Muhammad and are absolutely certain of the fact that they will not leave him or turn their backs to him, and they would not let a single form of danger approach him without them being the barrier between him and that danger. We would not allow anything to happen to our goal or to our mission, and Abu Sadiq is the center of that. So keeping that in mind, investigate this call and ask yourselves if you are truly loyal to the religion of God. Ask yourself if you are truly loyal to God Himself. And if you believe in God and you believe that you have been created by Him and that you must trust in Him, because that is part of being aware that God created us, is that we must trust in that Creator. If you truly trust in God, then dedicate your lives to it. But do it in a way that is complete.
Yeah.
Do it in a way where you support Him and you actually stand by what you believe in.
Yes.
Rather than simply liking the idea as if it's a trend or a fashion or something that sounds cool or a nice hobby. It's much bigger than that. People have put their lives on the line. People have, I'm sure the documentary would have highlighted that so clearly. How many people went to that border, that Turkish-Bulgarian border, and why were they there? They were not there on a picnic day. They were not there because, they were just trying it out, seeing if they could get into Europe. Absolutely not. These were people who, if you heard clearly what they were saying, they said, just kill us now. Because that's the only alternative they had. Imagine that. Imagine you believe in something so strongly, and the world is so adamant to rip away from you the freedom of belief. And it comes to a point where either you let go of your belief and you let go of your humanity, or you let go of your life. And they chose the latter. They said, okay, then take our lives. Take our lives if you want to, but we won't leave our humanity and we won't let go of our freedom of religion, which is to believe in this banner that says on it, allegiances to God.
Yes.
So this is not a joke.
They were literally like Braveheart, weren't they?
They
were like, you may take our life, but you'll never take our freedom.
Exactly. And how beautiful is that mindset and that stance. And we are a people that will not take anything less than that. That is the standard. The standard is, be a true human being, be a true man or a true woman. A true human being is someone who doesn't abandon their friends and who doesn't let go of what they believe in.
Absolutely.
And doesn't allow fear to overtake their principles and ideals.
Yes.
If you're like that, and you believe that you're a principled human being who wants to be a true human being and doesn't want to live the life of an animal, but rather stand by what they believe in, then absolutely you're welcome. Because that's what we're looking for, right?
Right, absolutely. And I think it's so important that to have the right kind of mindset before you decide to take that journey of 1,000 steps that begins with just one, to come as a tabula rasa, to come as a clean slate. No expectations, no concerns, empty out your cup.
Yes.
And come in trusting God that He is the best of providers. If you are coming in with any kind of expectations of what you could get, it could really land you into a lot of trouble. Make sure that your cup is empty when you come at the foot of the Master, and then patiently remain in your place until He cleanses the cup and then fills it with the light that He has from God. And I think if this is the mentality, this is the mentality of those people who we've seen succeed on this path. They didn't want to become television personalities. They didn't want to make friends because they were lonely. They wanted God. And in wanting God, everything else fell into place. Come here with an empty cup, put it at the feet of the Master, and know that He will pour it until it overflows. This is the truth, and this is what is going to make you succeed.